was like pretty bashful about asking for money and asking for what the value that we were delivering was, because I wanted everyone to like me. But at the end of the day, it's hard to do business when you're giving things away for free.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Founder Real Talk by Wisdom Partners. I'm your host, Josh Broward, CEO of Wisdom Partners. And in case this is your first time with us, the point of Founder Real Talk is to get past the chest thumping and ego pumping of normal startup podcasts and just normalize the struggle of the real journey for startup founders. Before we joined the call, Adam and I were commiserating, laughing about our shared struggles and similarities in parts of our journey. And that's really what this is about, is making some community, some space between founders to understand each other and to vicariously learn from each other and support each other, even if it's from afar through a podcast. So without any further ado, today we have as our guest my friend, client, collaborator, Adam Goldstein. And Adam is the CEO of Sway, which started out as a venue, like a co-working space, then became an events business, and now is still an events business, but has pivoted, added a really cool service where they help venues sell events. So they're kind of a sales arm for event venues. And I've been part of the journey with Adam for all three of those stages.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and excited to be here. Excited that we are still alive to tell the tale.
Yeah, that's right. You know what? I forget who said it, but like the number one thing that founders need to do to survive or to build a successful startup is don't die. Like don't let your company die, and you'll probably do better than most. Yeah. So tell us about Sway and the problem you're solving, or kind of two different problems you're solving with the two arms of your business.
Sway, as you'd mentioned, is an events company. We're based here in San Francisco, but work with clients nationally. And our clients today are event venues. We help them by implementing a system of lead generation and booking management. And really what that looks like is venues have a hard time getting leads that are qualified, that are a right fit for their venue, that are actively looking to book an event. And then they also have a hard time selling those events. Reason being is that these venues, for the most part, have main business that they are focused on running, whether it's a restaurant or a bar or a co-working space. And then events are more or less seen as an added benefit when they happen. But if you don't have a dedicated motion to building and maintaining that momentum, then it can be really difficult to stand out in the crowd in the events world. And so we are a dedicated team that helps market and sell these event spaces. And instead of producing our own software or tech that makes some element or aspect of the experience better for the venue manager, we step in and act as the venue manager and then use all of the great tools and software that exist out there to manage events for ourselves. And so it's part fractionalized service, part tech aggregator, and we're finding a lot of success in working with these venues and helping them to find events and book events. And when everybody's making money, then everybody's pretty happy. So that's where we're at today. As you had alluded to before, the company's had a few twists and turns. I originally started the company in 2021 sold my car and rented a space with the idea that I was going to do by the hour, by the day co-working and use the space to let people drop in and have access to high quality workspace near their home. Originally it was called Work Bistro, and almost immediately people started reaching out to us about hosting their events inside of our space. Events weren't even in the business plan originally, and by the end of year one they were about 90% of our revenue. And my wife sat me down and expressed that despite wanting to be a co-working business, we were actually pretty much exclusively an events business. And I might as well start making some changes structurally to lean into that more, to make our marketing and our branding a little bit more aligned with the event clientele, and then really lean into that. And so over the last 2 years, we've found our way through a variety of different trials and errors in the events world. First, with an app idea that we were trying to plug in to make it a one-stop shop for booking all aspects of your event, from venue to catering to photography and all other vendors, all under one roof. We realized pretty quickly that none of the customers who were actively paying us any money were actually good fits for that type of software product. So we scrapped that and then focused more on larger scale event management and production, and going after larger events and helping manage those events through from ideation all the way through to completion. And that was a good model for us for most of 2025. We dove into fractionalizing that event management experience and working directly with marketing teams and business development teams to help them build and deploy event strategy. Ultimately, we realized that there's a lot of friction in trying to sell that business. First, companies have to be wanting to host events. Second, they have to know that events are a very opportunistic pathway for them to get out in front of customers. And then lastly, they need to not have somebody already dedicated to that on their team. And so there's a lot of different filters that were difficult for us to then sell into. And when we found, actually, Josh, you were the person who introduced me to our first client, a restaurant here in San Francisco that needed a little bit of help managing some of their event marketing and event pipeline sales. And you'd asked me, is this something that I think we could tackle? And me being, well, sometimes a bit foolish, said, yeah, of course we could do that. So long story short, after stepping into that opportunity with you, we helped close $250,000 of business for that venue in the first 6 months of working with them. And we've now expanded that to about 20 venues across the US that we're running the same program for. That was around a year ago, actually. So February 2025 that we started this new model. And now I've got a team fully running up alongside me on this, and the sky's the limit.
Thanks for sharing. I want to dig in a little bit to how you've talked about basically 4 different services, really. One is co-working, another is venue, offering a venue for events, offering your own venue. Then third is managing large scale events for other people in other people's venues. And then now this 4th iteration of Sway is being the sales arm for event venues. And that one seems like it's getting the most traction. Can you tell us how this feels different than the others?
I think it was the first time in the entire business where we have a very captive audience that is very receptive to our message about what we're offering. And that inherently is different. When I was selling co-working passes for people to come into our space and use the space, there was always the question of so it's kind of like a WeWork. And it's no, it's not like a WeWork. It's more like this. And they're like, oh, so it's like a coffee shop. And it's like, well, it's not really a coffee shop. And they're like, oh, okay, got it. It's kind of like a library. And it's like, no. And so really like what I was finding was people were not actually interested in buying what I was selling. Of course, there were clients out there who we were, uh, who were attracted to us, but at the end of the day, it was also like very difficult to find, very expensive to find new customers. And then our LTV was pretty low. And so I think there was also like some restrictions around how we would be able to grow the business. So first and foremost, having a physical location is incredibly limiting in like your total potential revenue. There's only so many seats. There's only so many days in a week. There's only so many ways that you can slice the numbers to like juice revenue. And at the end of the day, there's only so many people who live within a radius of distance that are going to find value in what we're offering. Events were a little bit more extrapolated from that because, well, we could attract event hosts from a broader swath of the Bay Area, and attract people who were looking to book events that were more centrally located. But still, we ran into the issue of, well, people got to get here. They're only going to travel from so far. And then once we started to find more success and get busier with our event bookings, it then became the question of, well, what does the next step look like? What does growth look like? And really, the only way to grow an events business like that is to open up more venues. And to open up more venues, you need to raise more capital, you need to find more real estate, and then you need to be able to like rinse and repeat it. And at the end of the day, it wasn't the business that I was looking to build. I've been searching for a model that I can build on where it's really a focus of having some sort of machine that we can have an outbound function, an inbound function, and then like really know how to sell and execute. And up until this point, we've not had something like that. And so now we're finally in this place where we have a marketable and sellable offering to give to these venues. And then it's resonating with them because this is a pain point for them. A lot of venues don't have full-time salary that they can afford to pay to bring somebody in full-time. They don't have an events business. And when we're going to venues and saying, hey, would you like to make more money on the event side of the business? Usually the answer is an emphatic yes. And then it's just a matter of like, can we match them where they're at with their budget? And so now looking at it from the perspective of, okay, we've got an audience that is excited about what we're offering, and we've removed the limitations around geography, around growth costs, around competition, really, right? Like there's unlimited venues for lack of a better term, and no one venue is going to have like all of the solutions that we can offer to them. And if they do, that's great. They're not necessarily a client right now, but we're still pretty early on and finding some really good success with it.
So when you think about this last year, it's been a great year. You guys have had a lot of wins, but what's one win that you are especially proud of?
Yeah, I think bringing on our new co-founder, Kate Pauley, back in September was probably the biggest win of the last year. Kate's an all-star marketing director, expert, and our new CMO, and has done incredible work helping lift up the work that we're doing at Sway, not just from a client facing perspective, but also from a leadership perspective and like getting the most out of me as well. She's been in the events world for the better part of 3 decades and just brings with her an incredible amount of knowledge and how to exist and thrive in this space. And I know that she's going to be helping us go to the next level.
Yeah, I'm enjoying getting to know Kate too. She's pretty awesome. It's great. Also, just part of what stood out to me there is, well, your humility and openness and recognition that Kate helps get the best out of you. I think maybe part of that is it was hard being a solo founder for several years. All right. So here's another question. We like to say, wisdom partners, wisdom is failure redeemed. Another way of saying it is most of the most important lessons we learn the hard way. So, what is some wisdom that you have earned through the struggle?
I wish there were less of it. But I'm glad that I now have what you would consider to be wisdom. Some things that immediately come to mind for me: one, spending time on things that actually matter and move the needle versus things that feel like they matter and feel like they move the needle. Those are two very different things. And I'm now better at discerning what those are.
Let's dig into that a little. How do you tell the difference?
Yeah. Honestly, at this point, if it does not contribute directly to one of our KPIs, it's not getting my attention, or one of our like key initiatives for the quarter, right? It's got to be tied to one of those things. If it's a meeting that somebody wants to take with me and it's, not either going to help us win more business, help us deliver our business more effectively, or going to help my team deliver more effectively, it's likely not falling on my calendar. And I think just having more clarity around what success for this model looks like and having a clear vision of that and a clear operating alignment internally is helping to just really like focus in on what is actually meaningful. Yeah, that's like the biggest takeaway.
Do you think your ability to discern what is meaningful, is it more about your own growth as a leader, or is it more about uh, zeroing in on a business model with product market fit?
I think it's both, right? Like I think back to when I first started the business, I took a bunch of meetings with anyone and everyone who expressed interest, and I was just elated to have anybody like be interested in what we were working on. Most of the time, though, like nothing came from those meetings, and I spent a lot of my days like tending to that. And then I think it took me as a leader a long time to recognize what the business actually needs to succeed, which today is like we need to make money, we need to conserve costs, and we need to build an operating model that works and delivers an immense amount of value to our clients. And I think it took me a really long time to understand that. Even as like an early stage founder, I was like pretty bashful about asking for money and asking for what the value that we were delivering was, because I wanted everyone to like me and wanted people to want to do business with me. But at the end of the day, it's hard to do business when you're giving things away for free. And well, I did a lot of that and I'm done doing that. So hopefully that answers your question.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. Um, what what is the biggest challenge you're trying to solve these days?
I'm trying to hire a salesperson. I'm trying to like hire somebody who is going to be our rock on the sales front. And I've made the mistake of hiring too quickly, like 3 times now, and I've got burned. And, we're now like 6 months beyond the first person that I've hired. And like, I'm still doing all of the sales myself, which, founder led sales is great, but founder led company is better. And I'm like, I don't want to get burned again, but I also can't sit on this for much longer. And it's really difficult to know, like, are we making the right decision or not?
Yeah, one thing you and we've talked about a few times, and one thing that we end up talking with founders about a lot is salespeople are the hardest people to hire because
Hmm.
they're great salesmen of themselves. They can talk a great game about how awesome they are at selling, and it's really hard to work your way through the BS.
There are some people I've interviewed that I'm like, if you can't even sell yourself to me, I'm not sure how you're going to be able to sell our business to other people. So, it's a bit of a double edge. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so here's another question. How have you invested in yourself and your own leadership over the last year? I mean, your company's been growing a lot, growing like crazy. It's been
Hmm.
really busy, I know, because we've been talking through it. How have you invested in yourself, and why have you made time for that investment while you're riding the hockey stick?
Well, I've got to plug my coach. That's always super helpful. He would never ask for recognition, especially on a podcast like this, but I think recognition where recognition's due. So investing in like mental health and well-being is super important. Investing in things outside of work is also really important. I mean, I've got a great life partner, and making sure that we have time together on a at least a weekly basis, ideally a daily basis, but making time for friends who don't want to talk about Sway with me is really important. I'm an avid pickleball player, and just like making time for that is really important to me as well, from like an athletic and competitive standpoint, but also from like a fun and socially engaging standpoint. Yeah, and then I think like just overall like continuing to invest in myself is like the safest bet I've come across. I don't really love to like play the stock market too much. I'd rather just like take that money and invest it in having a home to live in.
So here's a two-part question. How have you evolved as a leader since you started Sway, and what do you think still needs to evolve?
To sum it up as concisely as I can, I am much more likely to let people know what I need from them and what my non-negotiables are now than when I started. And I'm not afraid to ask for what I need as like a baseline. That is probably one of the harder things that I've taken to get over, because there's like a lot of old personal stuff that's wrapped up in that around like self-worth and value that is like, it's always been there and hard to unpack. And then what still needs to grow? I think that despite being somebody who is very competitive and likes to win, I think that I need to be even more focused on the actual results that we're driving and not waver at all on hitting those results, right? Like, there's no more really like throwing your hands up in the air and saying like, oh, well, we didn't make our quarterly goals, right? Like, not that I have a board or VC investors or anybody like that I have to answer to, but I have a team and I've got internal stakeholders and a lot of my own like net worth wrapped up in Sway. I want it to be as successful as it can be, and it doesn't get there if I'm not like constantly monitoring how successful we are compared to how successful we thought we should be.
That's great. That's great. Just I'm just thinking through that. What does it mean for you to really be? What do you think it means? I know it's anticipatory, but what do you think it means to be really goal driven?
I think it's going to play out in me running a much tighter ship, and everything from like our sales team SLAs on first outreach and being able to like not only monitor that, but then also enforce it all the way through to like the monthly reports that we're sending to our venues and reporting on in aggregate and being really specific about the results that we generate, right? Because it's the proof is in the pudding. And if we're able to go to new clients and say, this is what we did last quarter, is this what you would like for your business? Great, then sign up with us. And if we don't know what those answers are and don't continue to actively seek them and then make improvements upon them so that we can be better next quarter, then that's going to lead to a downward spiral, and I'm not willing to accept that.
Part of what I'm hearing you say is knowing your own data and
Yeah.
watching it closely gives you more confidence in the sales process.
Right. At the end of the day, everything is measurable and calculable. And if we're either not measuring it or measuring it and doing nothing with it, then it's useless. And I think, I'm not an overly analytical person, so going to the numbers isn't my first instinct. I'm much more of a let's get out there and make it happen, and then we'll figure out what the deal is afterwards. But at the end of the day, I think that the more successful leaders are those who can do both. And I need to grow a little bit more in like keeping tabs on exactly where we're at, right? Like I should know on a weekly basis how much we sold. I should know on a weekly basis how much we spend. I should know on a weekly basis how profitable we are. And so if I don't know that, then I can't measure it and see what we can do to be better. And that is a big goal of mine for this year.
Uh, That's great. As your coach, I'm really happy to hear that. uh, so if there's somebody out there who's listening to this and they think, oh, I'd like to help Adam and the Sway team, what kind of intros are you looking for?
Yeah, for sure. Anyone who has I say venue, but what I really mean is a hospitality business with a physical location, and hospitality business being restaurant, bar, co-working space, lounge, hotel. If there is a way for them to do larger scale events, but that is not their main business, I want to talk to them. And then anyone who plans events or gatherings or summits, seminars, workshops, etc. for their organization or company, we want to help get them into great venues. So those are the two folks that I'm looking to meet. And also, might as well throw it out there, but if there's anybody looking to invest in or acquire a company like Sway.
They always be selling, right? Okay, so as a client, I like to end with a few more direct questions. Uh, so what kind of difference has it made for you to work with me and the Wisdom Partners team?
It's made most of the difference. I think about it like the best analogy I can come up with is like a shower head where you could have a lot of water flowing, but unless it's directed and focused, it's not going to have the highest pressure or outcome. And that's what it's felt like to work with Wisdom Partners, right? Channeling all that sometimes crazy energy that is associated with being an entrepreneur and being somebody who's out there starting something, and adding more discipline to it and adding more focus to it and not letting all of the extenuating circumstances overwhelm has made a ton of difference in what what we're able to do as a company because of what I'm able to do as a leader.
Thanks. That's great. Could you give us a little? I like to do before, during, and after. So, before working with Wisdom Partners, what was your journey like, and what was the company like? What did we do during the process that was specifically helpful? And I know we're still working together, but now how is it different from where you started?
Before we started working together, I was more or less on a walkabout trying to figure out what I was doing with my company and just ambling around. I think once we started working together, it was pretty apparent that ambling is not going to get me very far. And I think if I didn't reshift my focus from I want to start a company to I want to start a successful company, and really ironing out what that success looks like and means. And then, where we're at today and where I'd like to be going is like, how do I continue to become the most effective leader that I can be and take that through every single stage of my career from here on out? you know, at the end of the day, the opportunity that we're solving here at Sway, or like going after here at Sway, is big and meaningful, but like my ability to lead companies will always continue to get better. And it's definitely started at working with wisdom partners.
So, one last question. Most founders have cash flow issues. Like there's not an abundance of money laying around most of the time. So investing in yourself by hiring a
Mhm.
coach is often a really hard choice, particularly because the ROI is not immediate. It takes some time for it to build. We've been doing this for 2 years. What do you think the ROI has been for you and for Sway over this time? And how do you kind of track that in terms of your mental math about whether to keep doing this?
ROI is, in my opinion, not the right measure of success when you're thinking about working with a coach. Yes, it's important to understand that you are getting something out for what you put in, but the I would liken it to hiring a personal trainer when you are at different stages in your fitness career, right? You might need help getting into like initial shape, and there might be a trainer that is there and ready for you at that stage and can help take you from not working out at all to like working out once a week or twice a week. And then there's going to be another personal trainer who could take you from working out once or twice a week to working out like 5 times a week. And then there's going to be a personal trainer that can take you from working out 5 times a week to getting your diet in check and getting your supplements in check and helping you like go from in shape to like elite athlete, right? And so there are different stages, and I think it would not be a good idea to think about the ROI because there's not going to be like a dollar value on the end unless you're becoming a professional athlete. It's a little similar with this because at the end of the day, I'm working on continuing to improve myself as a business leader, and dollars invested in that today are going to show up in multitudes, not just in my ability to create value for this company, but my ability to create value in all of the companies. But then it's also like, how do I show up on a daily basis? Am I the person who I want to be? And so, like, if you're looking for an easy calculation of like, well, I invest in coaching today, and then in 6 months from now, I get $2 for every dollar I spent, or $10 for every dollar I spent, that's the wrong way to look at it. It's really like, am I the person today, or am I further along on becoming the person I want to be because of the work done? And I spent a lot of time being in a stuck place because I wasn't willing to invest. And once I made the jump to hire my first coach, I saw that, oh, they're having somebody who is helping push you along in that trajectory of growth that you see for yourself, and then helping further define what that trajectory should look like. That was, the best few $1,000s that I've ever spent on myself. And then, fast forward to starting to work with wisdom partners, going from kind of floundering in my company to now being really focused and, still driven and still have the work ethic, but like now it's very clear as to like what direction that momentum is heading in, and that's the ROI, right? It's like it's not a math equation so much as it is like a vibe check, but there also is like math associated with it too.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. So that's all for Founder Real Talk for today. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to our guest, Adam Goldstein. If you have a venue and want some more cash out of it, hit him up. He'll help you get some more events. You need to plan an event. We've worked with Sway. They're great. They help a lot in organizing the event details. So hit Adam and his team up for that as well. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.